In 2026, an open-source AI project from Nous Research appeared under an ancient name, Hermes Agent. Its own documentation describes a system that can remember selected facts, use tools, cross software surfaces, and delegate parts of a task. That does not mean the ancient Greeks predicted artificial intelligence. They did not, and we do not need to guess what every modern developer intended by the name. The more interesting fact is that Hermes keeps being chosen whenever people imagine intelligence in motion. Most of us were introduced to him as the messenger of the gods, the fast one, the useful one, the divine delivery service with excellent footwear. But the ancient stories give us someone far stranger. Hermes does carry messages. He also invents tools, steals property, falsifies evidence, talks his way out of prosecution, guides heroes through impossible missions, slips through military security, escorts the dead, and negotiates with gods who outrank him. The message is only the beginning. Hermes is what happens after words acquire hands and feet. So the useful question is not, was Hermes secretly an AI? It is this: why does a god imagined thousands of years ago look so much like what we now call an agent? To answer it, we have to meet Hermes before his first sunset. One of the fullest early portraits of the god survives in the anonymous poem traditionally called the Homeric Hymn to Hermes. Homeric describes its poetic tradition. Modern scholarship does not treat it as a composition securely written by the single poet, imagined behind the Iliad and Odyssey. The poem begins in a cave on Mount Selene in Arcadia. Maia, a daughter of Atlas, gives birth there to the son of Zeus. Before the story even starts moving, the poet announces the child's entire dossier. Hermes will be cunning, thievish, associated with cattle, dreams, nighttime, and gates. Then comes one of mythology's great accelerations. Hermes is born at dawn. By midday, he has played the lyre. That evening, he steals the cattle of Apollo. The lyre begins with an accidental encounter. Outside the cave, Hermes finds a tortoise. He kills it, hollows its shell, covers it with hide, adds a frame and strings, and turns an animal body into a musical instrument. No teacher appears. The child recognizes a possibility and builds it. This is the first reason messenger is too small a word. Hermes does not merely transmit something already formed. He converts materials into new capacities. A shell becomes an instrument. An encounter becomes a tool. The poem's Hermes is intelligent because he acts upon the world. That evening, Hermes reaches Apollo's herd and drives the cattle away. But theft is only the goal. The real display lies in how he manages the evidence. He turns the cattle so that they walk backward. Their tracks appear to lead toward the meadow they are leaving. Hermes himself does not walk backward. The ancient commentary explains that he moves normally, while improvised sandals disguise his own footprints. That detail matters. The famous trick belongs to the cattle's reverse trail, not to a baby god walking in reverse. Hermes then produces flame with fire sticks, slaughters 2 of the cattle, cooks the meat, and divides it into 12 portions. Although he is hungry, he does not eat them. The poem is not saying that Hermes discovered fire. An ancient commentator already distinguished his ignition method from the older Prometheus tradition. Nor should the scene be presented confidently as Hermes invents sacrifice. It may allude to the institution of sacrifice for the 12 gods, but both its ritual meaning and Hermes's refusal to eat are debated. The operation is ingenious, but not flawless. An old vineyard worker has seen the strange procession. Hermes attempts to recruit his silence. Apollo follows omens, questions the witness, and reads the contradictory tracks. Hermes races home, hides the evidence of his journey, wraps himself in swaddling clothes, and prepares to perform innocence. To modern eyes, this resembles an attack on an audit trail. Hermes does not simply move through an environment. He alters the information by which his movement can be reconstructed. That is a modern comparison, not an ancient technical category, but it exposes the structure of the myth. Intelligence becomes the power to act, conceal, redirect, and adapt. Apollo carries the accused infant before Zeus. Hermes argues that the charge is absurd. How could a newborn steal cattle? He points to his swaddling clothes and denies useful knowledge of the crime. Zeus is not deceived, but instead of erupting in anger, he laughs at the child's brilliantly performed denial. He orders Hermes to guide Apollo back to the herd and reveal the truth. When they reach the cattle, Hermes produces the lyre. Apollo is overwhelmed by a sound he has never heard before. The quarrel changes form. Hermes offers the instrument. Apollo grants him authority over the cattle and places the herdsman's whip in his hand. The poem later describes Hermes as having a role in establishing exchange among human beings. Zeus confirms the brothers' friendship and Hermes's new honors. Hermes does not defeat Apollo by force. He converts conflict into exchange. A stolen herd, a new technology, and a dangerous talent are reorganized into a relationship. This is not moral purification. The poem's closing lines still warn that Hermes deceives mortals at night. Governance does not make him harmless. It gives his capabilities a recognized place, obligations, and limits. Hermes enters Olympus not because he stops being difficult, but because the gods find a way to live with and use his intelligence. The cattle heist begins as a crime story. It ends as an origin story for a job no other god could quite perform. Hermes becomes keeper of herds. Apollo calls him a bargainer and says Zeus has given him a role in establishing exchange among human beings. The word matters. Barter is a controlled crossing. This object leaves my hands and enters yours. Value moves the other way. Words hold the transfer together. Hermes is therefore at home in commerce before Rome ever calls him Mercury. Not because trade is automatically dishonest, and not because every merchant is a thief, but because exchange depends on movement, timing, persuasion, and trust between people who may begin as strangers. And Hermes's speech is never ornamental. His alibi tries to stop a prosecution. His music changes Apollo's desire. His promise stabilizes a truce. Later, careful words will help move Persephone out of Hades, and precise instructions will help Priam survive Achilles' camp. Speech in Hermes's world is another tool. It can reconcile. It can bargain. It can misdirect. The same quick tongue that opens a negotiation can also sell a lie. That ambiguity is not a side effect of the myth. It is the point. Hermes is promoted because he understands both the rule and the loophole, and because Olympus would rather place that intelligence inside an order than pretend it can be wished away. That intelligence eventually gathers around a remarkable collection of domains: roads and travelers, flocks and property, luck and exchange, sleep and waking, dreams and nighttime, thieves and persuasive speech, omens and passage to the dead. Ancient monuments make the pattern visible. A herm was a pillar-like image associated with Hermes. The Metropolitan Museum explains that such monuments stood along roads and boundaries, at gates, near houses, and at tombs. A Getty example preserves the traditional form: a square pillar topped by a mature, bearded head, originally furnished with side projections and male genitals. This is very different from the single image popular culture often supplies. An archaic vase in the British Museum shows Hermes as a bearded traveler wearing a broad-brimmed Perseus, a cloak, and boots, and carrying his herald's staff. Other ancient images do give him winged footwear or winged headgear. The wings are genuinely ancient. They are simply not universal, and Hermes was not always imagined as a smooth-faced youth in a winged helmet. His herald staff is the Kerukeion, known in Latin as the caduceus. Ancient examples can end in a pair of intertwined snakes. It should not be confused with the original medical emblem, the single serpent staff of Asclepius. The National Library of Medicine identifies use of Hermes's caduceus as an ancient medical symbol as a later misconception. Across these domains and images, one pattern recurs. Hermes belongs where categories meet: road and property, stranger and household, sleep and waking, truth and deception, mortal world and underworld. He is not merely the god of a thing. He is the god of the crossing. Apollo's cattle were rehearsal. Hermes's next famous target was guarded by someone built to defeat stealth. Io, a young woman desired by Zeus, had been transformed into a cow. The details vary, but Hera gained possession of her and placed her under the watch of Argus Panoptes, Argus the all-seeing. Early sources disagree about his anatomy. Some give him a few extraordinary eyes. Later art and poetry make him the hundred-eyed sentinel, able to sleep with only part of his vision at a time. Zeus sends Hermes to get past him. Here the traditions fork. A Greek mythographic account says Hermes intends to steal Io away, but the plan is exposed. Unable to remain hidden, he kills Argus with a stone. The Roman poet Ovid turns the mission into theater. Mercury removes the most obvious signs of divinity, approaches dressed as a shepherd, plays music, tells stories, and works patiently against the guard's attention. When every eye finally closes, he strikes. Hera preserves Argus's eyes in the peacock's tail. Later mythographers connected this killing with Hermes's common epithet Argifontes, traditionally heard as Argus Slayer. The epithet is old, that neat etymology is not certain, and other ancient and modern explanations exist. Nor is this a simple rescue story. Io is trapped inside a contest of divine power, and killing her guard does not erase what has been done to her. But as a story about Hermes, the pattern is unmistakable. The all-seeing guard is not beaten by speed alone. He is beaten through disguise, timing, speech, music, and the manipulation of attention. Hermes has moved from hiding tracks to defeating surveillance. Sometimes Hermes performs the operation. Sometimes he equips the person who must perform it. Perseus is ordered to bring back the head of Medusa, whose gaze turns observers to stone. A later Greek mythographic compendium, the Library of Pseudo-Apollodorus, makes the division of labor unusually clear. Hermes and Athena guide Perseus toward the beings who can reveal the route. Other supernatural helpers provide other equipment. Hermes gives Perseus an adamantine sickle. Athena guides his hand as he looks away from Medusa and uses a reflected image to strike. Hermes does not kill Medusa for him. He supplies guidance and the decisive tool. Athena supplies another kind of guidance. Perseus still has to enter the danger and act. That distinction will return with Odysseus. Hermes does not replace the hero. He changes what the hero is capable of doing. The clearest demonstration comes late in the Iliad. Hector is dead. Achilles has refused to return his body. Hector's father, King Priam, prepares to cross the battlefield, carrying an enormous ransom into the camp of the men who have killed his sons. Zeus chooses Hermes to guide him. The reason given is revealing. Hermes is especially disposed to escort human beings and favor those he chooses. Hermes does not arrive announcing himself as a god. He assumes the appearance of a beautiful young warrior. He approaches Priam without provoking flight, takes control of the reins, and strengthens the animals drawing the ransom. At the Greek defenses, he puts the guards to sleep, draws back the bolts, opens the gates, and conducts the king and his treasure to the dwelling of Achilles. Only then does Hermes reveal his identity. Before leaving, he gives Priam practical instructions for the encounter. Enter, grasp Achilles as a suppliant, and appeal to the people Achilles loves. Later, while the camp sleeps, Hermes returns to wake Priam and guide him safely out. Hermes enables the meeting, but he does not perform its emotional work. Priam and Achilles themselves create the extraordinary scene of shared grief and recognition. Hermes deserves credit for making the encounter possible, not for replacing their humanity. This is far more than message delivery. Zeus supplies the objective. Hermes translates it into a sequence of adaptive actions: disguise, approach, transport, access, timing, instruction, and extraction. The same talent that once concealed stolen cattle now carries a bereaved father through hostile security. Capability alone has not changed. Authority and purpose have. The Odyssey allows a useful comparison. In Book 5, Zeus sends Hermes to Calypso with the god's fixed decision that Odysseus must be released. Hermes travels to her island, states the command, and departs. Here he really does function primarily as a messenger. But Book 10 gives him a different role. Odysseus is approaching the house of Circe, who has transformed his companions into swine. Hermes meets him on the road, identifies the danger, and provides the herb called moly, which will protect him from her drug. He then explains what Circe will do and gives Odysseus a procedure: drink, resist the enchantment, draw his sword, compel her submission, and secure an oath against further harm. Hermes does not enter the house and solve the encounter himself. He supplies threat intelligence, a countermeasure, and instructions. Odysseus still has to act. A modern audience may recognize the pattern of a tool-using assistant or an operational runbook. That comparison concerns function, not consciousness. The ancient god and a software system are not the same kind of being. What the myth understands is simpler and more durable. Useful intelligence often means giving a person the right tool and the right sequence at the moment of risk. Hermes also crosses the boundary no mortal can cross freely. In the Homeric hymn to Demeter, Demeter's grief has brought famine upon the earth. Zeus sends Hermes down to Hades with his golden wand. His mission is to persuade the ruler of the dead with careful words and bring Persephone back into the light. Hermes enters the hidden realm, states Zeus's command, takes the reins of Hades's chariot, and conducts Persephone to her mother. At the beginning of Odyssey Book 24, he performs the opposite movement. Holding the wand that can induce sleep or waking, Hermes gathers the souls of the dead suitors and leads them toward the asphodel meadow. Later language calls this role psychopomp, conductor of souls. Yet Hermes is not king of the dead. He can enter Hades without ruling it. His mobility is authorized. His sovereignty is limited. That distinction is central to agency. Access to a domain is not ownership of that domain. The guide can cross a boundary while remaining answerable to powers on both sides. Hermes eventually crossed a boundary no road could mark, from Greek religion into Roman. The Romans identified him with Mercury. That did not produce a perfect copy. Greek stories, Roman institutions, local cults, and poets accumulated around the shared figure. The family resemblance is unmistakable, but Mercury acquired a distinctly Roman public life. Horace opens a hymn by addressing Mercury as eloquent. He praises the god who shaped early human beings through cultivated speech, then rapidly summons the familiar portfolio: divine herald, inventor of the lyre, ingenious thief, secret guide of Priam, and conductor of souls. In Rome, eloquence is not decoration. It is civilizing power, political power, and commercial power. Ovid gives that commercial Mercury a festival scene on the Ides of May. Merchants carry water from a sacred spring near the Capine Gate. They sprinkle themselves and the goods that will soon change owners. Then Ovid supplies a wickedly comic prayer: wash away yesterday's false oaths, overlook tomorrow's, and please grant a profit. Mercury laughs from above, remembering the cattle he stole from Apollo. Ovid is writing festival poetry, not transcribing every Roman merchant's private conscience. But the joke works because the association is already understood. Trade requires trust, profit tempts deception, Mercury presides over the uncomfortable space between them. The Roman god is therefore not a replacement for Hermes. He is another historical configuration of the same dangerous gifts: movement, exchange, eloquence, gain, and the suspicion that a clever bargain may contain a trick. Then the name crosses again, this time into Egypt and into an entirely different kind of literature. In Greco-Roman Egypt, Greek speakers identified Hermes with the Egyptian god Thoth, patron of scribes, writing, and sacred knowledge. From that encounter emerged Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the Thrice-Great. This figure must be kept separate from the infant cattle thief of the archaic hymn. Hermes Trismegistus belongs to a later Greco-Egyptian world. The writings attributed to him were produced by multiple authors, not discovered as the work of one prehistoric sage. The best-known collection is the Corpus Hermeticum, a group of Greek dialogues composed in Roman Egypt during the early centuries of the Common Era. Here Hermes is less a mischievous Olympian than a revealer and teacher. He speaks with figures such as Tart and Asclepius about mind, cosmos, divinity, the human condition, and spiritual rebirth. A wider Hermetic literature also engaged astrology, alchemy, magic, and other forms of technical or sacred knowledge. Centuries later, Renaissance readers would receive Hermes Trismegistus as a primordial sage and give the Hermetic writings an extraordinary afterlife. The continuity is not a single doctrine running unchanged from Arcadia to Egypt. It is a continuity of imaginative function. The Greek Hermes crosses roads, gates, and worlds. The Greco-Egyptian Hermes carries knowledge across the boundary between divine and human. The name survives because it can travel. The end of the hymn to Hermes adds one more limit. Apollo retains privileged knowledge of Zeus's highest council. Hermes receives a more restricted form of divination involving three bee-like prophetic maidens, identified by commentators with the Thrice-Great. The precise tradition is difficult, and the surviving text contains complications, but its hierarchy is clear. Hermes is powerful without being omniscient. The modern analogy is permission scope. An agent may reach many systems while possessing only bounded authority and incomplete knowledge. Mobility is not omniscience. Fluency is not truth. Access is not legitimacy. The ancient poem recognizes the need to define what even a remarkably capable intermediary is allowed to know and do. Look across artificial intelligence, and the product shelf starts to resemble a digital pantheon. Google says Gemini was chosen partly for the mythic twins, and partly for two AI teams joining forces. Amazon offers Titan models. Microsoft built an AI accelerator called Maia, which is, wonderfully, also the name of Hermes' mother. NVIDIA has Morpheus for AI-driven cybersecurity. Only Gemini comes with that maker-confirmed mythic explanation. The other connections are our observation, not a secret naming confession. Still, the joke practically writes itself. When the future needs a name, it keeps raiding antiquity's label drawer. A name can compress a whole theory of action. Titan suggests scale. Gemini suggests duality. Morpheus suggests dreams. Hermes suggests movement with intent, translation, routing, access, negotiation, and the unnerving ability to make something happen on the far side of a boundary. Return, then, to the contemporary Hermes Agent. As of July 26, 2026, Nous Research's own documentation presents a system that can retain selected context, reuse procedures, operate tools across different surfaces, and delegate bounded work. Those are current first-party descriptions, not independently tested claims. They are enough to make the mirror legible without turning an ancient god into a product mascot. A messenger produces language. An agent links language to action. That is the structure Hermes has embodied from the beginning. He turns a tortoise into an instrument, a theft into a negotiation, a hostile camp into a traversable route, a dangerous encounter into a procedure, and a divine command into a changed human situation. The same flexibility that saves Priam also falsifies a trail. Olympus does not eliminate the ambiguity. It gives the power a place, a purpose, and limits. Myth is not an engineering specification, and software has neither Hermes's childhood nor his moral personality. The resemblance is functional, goals become steps, tools extend reach, obstacles provoke adaptation, permissions determine which boundaries may be crossed. The safe simplicity of a messenger ends when the message has been delivered. An agent continues. It opens the gate. It chooses the route. It uses the tool. It changes what happens next. Artificial intelligence did not make Hermes relevant. It made one of his oldest features easier to see. Hermes is not the ancient Greek god of AI. He is an ancient anatomy of agency, mobile, inventive, persuasive, adaptive, bounded, and never automatically trustworthy. The final question is not whether the agent can cross the boundary. It is who authorized the crossing, who bears its consequences, and toward what end.